The first emperor of Rome, Augustus Caesar, is attributed with saying, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble." In a similar vein, DeWitt Clinton found New York a decentralized rural state and left it as the industrious heart of a new America. DeWitt Clinton was born in 1769 in Little Britain, New York. He studied at Columbia University and was admitted to the bar in 1790. DeWitt Clinton made his first impact on politics by writing in newspapers opposing the ratification of the Constitution due to its lacking key protections for citizens' rights. His formal career into politics began with nepotism. The first office he held was as secretary to the governor, his uncle, in 1789. In 1798, he was appointed to the post of state senator, and 3 years later he joined the Council of Appointments, an extremely important office that allowed him to give out patronage. In 1802, he was appointed to fill a vacancy in the Senate. He would only serve for a year in there, though, and quickly returned to New York and was appointed as mayor of New York City. As mayor, he brought about massive social change and greatly assisted the citizenry of New York, especially the poor. DeWitt Clinton cared greatly for the poor and had a paternalistic attitudes towards the plights that they faced, such as disease and highly flammable housing. He addressed the city's basic human needs, improving its fire control and sanitation, raising the quality of its uniformed police force and local militia, quelling a riot of rowdy sailors, protecting Irish immigrants against nativist attacks, and helped to incorporate a company to supply fresh water to the city, reducing yellow fever epidemics. Despite he himself being a Freemason, a group historically in conflict with the Catholic Church, he supported many reforms that assisted its members' freedom and fought against discrimination. In 1806, he successfully enfranchised Catholics and was able to defend the seal of confession for priests. This grew his base of support and made New York City a much more attractive place for immigrants. He supported legislation calling for the gradual emancipation of slaves that was to be fully completed in 1827, as well as higher education for women, penal reform, and supported the integration of Native Americans and African Americans into the predominantly white society, albeit with a paternalistic white savior attitude. In 1812, DeWitt Clinton ran for the presidency. When speaking to Federalists, he advocated to end the war and to pursue closer ties with Britain. When speaking with Democratic Republicans, usually shortened to Republicans for convenience, he advertised a quick and decisive victory. This led to a confused but almost successful run, the race coming down to Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, which would be a make or break for several campaigns at the time. Defeat such as this would be a minor setback for most, given how close he was to victory, but DeWitt Clinton was not that lucky. National defeat and divisions within the Republican Party in New York drove Clinton from public office, and in 1815 he was a private citizen, his political career apparently over. DeWitt Clinton still had some clout in Albany, and was able to use this as well as his own wealth to drum up support for a canal project linking Lake Erie to the Hudson River. Using this support for a canal, he returned to the governorship in 1817, where he worked to enact the policies he enacted as mayor on the state level, as well as using patronage to strengthen his supporters. Defeated for the governorship in 1822 by the rise of the anti-Clinton Bucktails coalition under the leadership of Martin Van Buren, opposing his supposed overreach and reckless spending on infrastructure projects. As a courtesy, Clinton retained his position on the Erie Canal Committee, and after the partial completion of the canal, he received an explosion of support and reclaimed the governorship from the fall of 1824 until his death in 1828. In 1803, while DeWitt Clinton first served as mayor of New York City, America was still seen in Europe as a frontier colony, not worthy of any serious consideration for its arts and science. Clinton would use his personal influence and that of his public office to begin to change that. One reason that America was not seen as a place of new culture was due to its democratic form of government. The vast majority of art in the Old World was commissioned by members of the wealthy aristocracy or the clergy. In America, these wealthy patrons were found lacking. DeWitt Clinton, however, wanted to change this paradigm. Quoting Clinton, "A Republican government, instead of being unfriendly to the growth of the fine arts, is the appropriate soil for their cultivation." DeWitt Clinton believed that in America anyone could become an artist, not bound by elitist caste systems nor by the whims of fickle patrons. DeWitt Clinton wanted the state to provide funds to artists and scientists to boost national prestige and to install Republican virtue onto the population. To achieve this, he needed to overcome another advantage Europe had over America: education. The American populace was far less educated than the rich Europeans that Clinton was competing against. Clinton was to get people to be educated. He couldn't rely on aristocratic educations. Thus, DeWitt Clinton's crusade for public schools began. Clinton was able to use money from the rising professional and business classes in New York to help fund public education. Clinton used the money to fund grammar schools and colleges across the state. He hired trained teachers, opened new schools for the poor who didn't have one provided by their religious denomination, and gave funding to denominational schools that were previously denied funds. This funding and reforms were extremely successful, and by 1829, almost 500,000 students were enrolled in common schools. The Erie Canal is often seen as the most important part of DeWitt Clinton's legacy. This is for a good reason. At its peak, the canal carried nearly 5 million tons of traffic through its waterways. This was an astonishing amount that led to a boom in manufacturing in New York due to the ease at which raw materials could be shipped to manufacturing centers and for the transportation of people within the state. His plan stalled on one question: how was a decentralized and relatively poor state such as New York going to pay for this colossal project? The short answer was, it wasn't, not in the way the economy was currently structured. In early America, many states made reforms to raise funds for civil infrastructure that would ultimately lead to a stronger economy. To fund the Erie Canal, New York State would use a combination of public funds, debt, and private investment to create this common public asset. This rampant spending would be well worth it, however. In 1826, while it was still under partial construction, 7,000 boats used the canal, and that same year, the Commission reported that toll revenues had exceeded $500,000, adjusted for inflation being around $16 billion, leading to the canal paying off all its debts and loans by 1837. Due to this revenue and the economic prosperity the canal brought New Yorkers, the state would flourish, and a massive population boom led to the creation of several new cities. The canal also greatly assisted New York City's industries, allowing for cheap and fast shipments of resources from the west of the state. In conclusion, DeWitt Clinton, through his advocacy for education, science, and the arts, his rocky political career, and his magnum opus, his canal, led to an explosion in economic and social development and advancement, setting the foundation for the national powerhouse that New York would become. Mr. Clinton found New York as fertile ground and left her as the shining jewel of the American Republic.